Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, and welcome to Linda's Conscious Talks, and I'm your host, Linda Summers, and we've got a fascinating show for you today. The topic is how to attain windows into our interconnected universe, understand and develop such conversations with the truth. And our guest tonight is going to be unidentified, as he is a public figure that wishes to be anonymous, but I will let you know he is trained, with this person, he has had very rare, unheard of experiences into metaphysics and meta-knowledge. Trained in one of the doctoral level sciences and practicing in this professional role, he brings a practical, scientific, experimental view into his happenings. But I also want to let you know this is a non-organized spiritual conversation. Don't be deceived by the mention of truth, and that's in quotes. This is a practical conversation. His beliefs and theories are all developed out of a non-cause and effect experiences that are of pure thought experiments. So anybody, if you have any questions, please call in to 347-850-8423. So with that, let's get started in this really very fascinating conversation. And we will have a part 2, August 10th at 8 p.m. So anybody listening, we're going to continue this, and we'll continue probably into 4 parts of this. So let's dive in. So let's talk about really your experiences with this relationship with truth, how you came into that.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Linda.
You're welcome.
Well, it's a little nerve-wracking talking about this, but I'm excited to talk about it too. I was always very sensitive and curious about things from a young age, and I kind of believe, where you have curiosity and you have love, you have success, right? So
yeah, even
if there are some things about me that you can track down that show me to be abnormal, which it definitely occurs to me that I am, I still don't think it makes a difference, because I think anybody that was this focused on this since, 7 or something, or however long I can remember, I just think you develop it in a good scientific perspective. So I just, just to cut through some of it, because I know we have so much time, I had an incident where I was probably 14, a friend of mine. There were things that happened before this, I had these things that happened that didn't happen, places that I was that weren't there. And there was one with a horse. The first time I remember it, when I was, I guess I'm going to tell this. When I was an infant, I have this memory of being on my cousin's property, which had a lot of horses, and there was a big driveway up. And I was in one of those baby rockers, so I don't know. I couldn't talk. And
oh, wow.
I remember this. Yeah, I was real young. And I remember this horse coming at me, and I could hear him or her talking. I think it was a him. And I don't really know. And I heard him say something like, "What are you doing here? Why are you in the middle of this road?" And as he got close to me, I got really scared, because here was this head coming for me to eat me or something.
Exactly.
And for the longest time, I thought that was real. That could easily be imagination, and some of the other things can't. And I hope we can get to some of those, but it might be difficult, but I'm sure we could. But anyways, I thought that was real, and I've been told the time where I talked to my mother about it. I talked to my mother about 2 years ago, and I was saying, hey, I have this memory, why was I left out there, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, I would never leave you on the road as an infant. She just felt sure it didn't happen. And then because I've had other experiences that didn't happen, I realized that it didn't happen. I don't know if I should just go into something that is more fantastic than that, or if you want to lead a question, or what do you think?
Yeah, I would go into that, because really all this is going to apply into attaining windows into our interconnected universe, which is really what we're talking about, source. So, and how to tap into that. So, I think to give scenarios of because I'm sure there's people out there that have had similar, or not similar, but experiences, and not really quite sure to put that. Yeah.
Well, I could talk about, I'm just going to be frank, right? It's just you and me and anyone else that's listening, and I hope people hear it, especially because, but, I could talk about the time where I think I heard something, an ultimate force in my bedroom, pretty much God. I say God just because it's a anthropomorphized state, you want to see the energy as God, but beyond that, I don't have a clue. But I could talk about that experience, which is pretty fantastic. I could talk about a lot of things, or I could give another example of, remember the pork bun? I'm sure I told you about that time where I went to a Chinese bakery, and then like a day or two later, it was a dry cleaning business 3 days after. It was a Chinese bakery with full kitchen and ovens and everything like that. But I don't know. What do you think I should say? Which story? Give me an idea. One of those two,
I
guess.
think to begin with, my question would be, because claiming to have spoken with some sort of form of universal force, God, of what you're calling that, I would go into that, because I think that is, because, we talk about we didn't talk about it, but in the description as your astrological chart shows a Grand Trine and Yod Pointing to the house in groups of Aries. So a lot of this is leading to a mission that you probably have here that, So I would go into this force that, it's almost like conversations with God, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Well, first of all, you mentioned that I have a Grand Trine and a Yod. I'll just say that. After a lot of these experiences occurred, I had a national astrologer do my chart. Actually, I'm going to a therapist today, and he thinks it's funny because I'll use them, and I'll say, "Do you think I'm psychotic?" And he goes, "No, actually, I think you're like a famous person or something." And it surprises me how many people. It doesn't surprise me, but it's interesting how this guy used to be administrator of a hospital for 40 years, and he's quite an accomplished person. But I have in my astrological chart what's called a Grand Trine and a Yod. Grand Trine just is these areas of stress that allows you to accomplish great things. It means the first three positions of my astrological chart, my sun, my rising, and my moon, are all in the same element, which is air. I'm an Aquarius, but I also have then a Gemini rising, and then I have Libra moon. But anyways, the Yod is like, Yod means God. I forget exactly what it's from, but in the Old Hebrew they call it. There's some reference to God somewhere about Yod, and it's sort of, the natural astrologer told me it's sort of like, your sun sign is your general mission in life, and a Yod is a deal with God, basically. And with my Yod pointing to a certain house, along my Grand Trine, it points to the house of groups, and Aries to the leader. Aries is the great leader of the zodiac in groups. So, when I was young, getting up to the story of God and all that, I was walking once and just realizing how screwed up everything was, and how no one seems to be coherent, and all the difficulties that we have in communicating. And then I realized, well, gosh, if I see this in everyone, it must be in me too, And I think that's one of the fundamental issues with humanity is we don't recognize. We recognize everything on the outside, but nothing on the inside. We can be so hypocritical. So anyways, in that moment, I was like, and then I saw this symbolic form or something. I didn't see it. It just came to me. It wasn't like something I saw, which I've seen things like in that way. And it was basically a symbolism of kind of a sun, but we're on the outside of it, and the sun pushes its rays through us. And the issue is, does it push its rays through us, or do we allow them through us? And the idea and the statement that I've always said from that came out of that when I was like about 18 or 19, was that you can't tell the truth what it is. It tells you what it is. All you can do is get in the way of the truth, and that you must, in a way, sacrifice yourself to it. Not sacrifice yourself, but you must. Obedient isn't the right word either, but it's something to that extent. Do you want to ask a question, or should I continue on?
Yeah, Nick, continue on. I was going to say, the truth meaning this force, God, of what you're saying, or the source.
Everything that is you jump up and you fall down. Yeah, it's science. Everyone's always talking that, well, that's not my truth. you do realize, listen, if anybody listening, and I hope there are some people listening, say, I believe a person is talking, they might not believe in what I'm saying, and they haven't heard much, and they might not believe in you. But I think we're hard-pressed to say that they won't believe that we're real. And if they're real, and we're real, and the animals are real, and the stones are real, that means they exist in something, and that something is the truth. And what is the boundaries of that truth? How do we all relate? And there's too much time for me, and I could go through physics and stuff like that, and I could prove my point through physics. I've read like 20 books. But actually, let me pick up there. I had some experiences, and they were strange, and I started reading a lot of physics books. And I've read probably 20 or something. And in that time where I saw that sun symbolism and that the truth holds you, you don't hold the truth, therefore all reading is irrelevant in that sense. To discover the truth, you must sacrifice all ideas. You can't just say you know God. You can't just say you know the truth. That's just as bogus as actually anything else. There is no difference. So anyway, I knew at that point, seeing the sun, that the key was to no matter what you do, it doesn't necessarily need to be meditation, but to meditate, to drop yourself, to stop talking, to receive the truth, to let the truth flow through you, and then it will lead you there. And I used to meditate for 2 hours and stuff, trying to experience that for a long time, fasting like a few days out of every month, and I learned a lot. But the situation with God, what happened is I was basically at the point at the end of these books, like 12 years later, saying, I've got to, and I had meditated a lot, but I had gotten out of it because so many crazy things had happened, and I couldn't deal with it in a way. And I said, I've got to get back to the meditation. So I said, okay, well, I'm a little scared of meditation or whatever the hell is going on, or I'm lazy or some combination of everything. And I said, okay, well, instead of reading these physics books, why don't I read an experiential book, a book that talks about the actual search, or the internal experience? And I said, kind of in reference to God or that internal energy, I'm going to use God, but I don't know what it is, but I think it's important to anthropomorphize it into something like ourselves. At least that's what I like to do. So in that, I said to God, allow me, and to me, that's what it's very important to say. Allow me, if you see me in favor, and that's not quite, my words will never completely convey what I mean, but it's sort of like that. Will you allow people to come to me and tell me what book you want me to read? And so I would randomly just go up to people and tell them the truth, which I like to do. It gets me into trouble. And I've learned not to do it as much. But and everyone kept telling me this book, Ishmael. I don't know if any of the listeners have heard of it. And so anyways, I was in school. I'm going to try to brush past all the strangeness. But basically, when I'm in large groups of people, I feel too much. And I can feel both what someone's saying to me, and I can feel the inconsistency in their spirit. And it scares me. And I've learned to deal with it better now, and I've learned to just communicate with the whole of the feature to a better extent, right? It can never be perfect.
Right.
And anyways, I got stressed out in that experience. I decided to go to a movie. I'm just going to go through this real quick. In the movie, this weird thing happened where this happened 2 or 3 times to me, at least, where all of a sudden I expand, and my sensitivity gets so heightened, it gets to the point where I can feel people crossing, not crossing me like that, but they're going to come within my physical, where I am, and so I can almost count them coming. And I don't necessarily believe. I'm in a very clear state. It's like a meditative high, and I can just feel things. It's pretty creepy. I've had delusions in it, but when I say delusions, you could call them delusions. You could call me psychotic, and that's a worthy question of saying, am I psychotic? I think that's, completely fair, because by definition I am psychotic within this, but I don't think I'm psychotic. Anyways, so I had that experience, and it was pure. It was such an intense feeling. And up until that point, I used to always walk around. I used to practice my sensation. I would try to feel inanimate objects. I would walk from them, let myself drop in them, and I would walk down places with just huge amounts of people. I loved to do it and just feel people. No one ever recognized I was doing it besides the next girlfriend, which was interesting. And And anyways, in this situation where I felt this intense energy, I was doing that. I went out and I looked inside people, and whenever I felt this energy in them and I made a connection to this energy, this knowing that I guess I receive when I do that, they looked back at me with this pure, loving smile. That was unusual, and I loved them. I was intoxicated with them. They were the most beautiful creature, but it wasn't only them, it was everyone. I don't think it would have mattered if they were a serial killer. I mean, I wouldn't have appreciated what they'd done, but I'm not sure I could have seen anything else besides pure love in everyone. And I'm so afraid and so mistrustful. And I wanted that experience, and I knew that things were going to close down on me. I was on a timeline. I was like, I want this to continue. And then I remembered something that happened in the morning. In the morning, I was asleep, and I woke to this voice in my room that just simply said, "You are a teacher." But the way it said it, there was no conversation I was to have with it. There was no speculation. There was no examining it. It just was. And it was like I had no power to think about it. It was the strangest thing. It wasn't until that moment that I actually said, "What the hell was that?" And then I heard it say that I'm a teacher, and I was like, maybe that's why that happened, because lots of stuff had happened to me by that point. Maybe that's why that happened. Maybe this thing is telling me I'm a teacher. And here's the thing. Since I was a small child, I had thought I was special.
You did.
And teaching was something I always thought I could convey this stuff. And I was like, okay, well, God is telling me, because that's more or less what I interpreted that voice as, that I'm a teacher. And I'm like, here's this experience, pure love, no tragedy between us, no blame. It was beautiful. And I was like, okay, well, I think what he's doing is that I should lead a group, bring this about, and continue this, kind of bring God onto people, allow us to love each other and appreciate each other. Anyways, I was like, well, how would I do that? And this is going to end soon. I don't have much time. I can feel it. The same way I could sense people coming at me, I could feel its end in the near future. And it was real near future. And then by the end of my little walk and feeling into people and appreciating them and, basically loving them and they're loving me, they're looking back at me somehow knowing what I'm doing. At least that's what I saw in them. And when I'm in that state, I basically experienced them. I experienced inside them, and therefore I have some knowledge of their experience that I shouldn't have. Anyways, so I was like, okay, well, I gotta be this teacher. I have to teach these people. This is what God is telling me. All these strange experiences, designing this thought. And I said, well, how would I do that? And I said, well, how do I look for women? I said, okay, when I look for women, this is like, I don't know. It's a long time ago. It's like 20 years ago or something close to that. I said, how do I look for women? I place ads in the Phoenix in Boston. And so I said, okay, well, I'll write this ad and I'll put it burn. I'll say, I'm a teacher, come learn from me, or something like that. So this so long ago. I don't specifically remember the details. And I decided at that moment that this was the experiential experience I was looking for. Ishmael is what I asked to be shown by God to do this. So I wrapped it all up into Ishmael, saying that will be the symbolism that I'll really do this, because I was afraid I wouldn't do it. So I went to get Ishmael. Here's this book that I'm using to wrap it in my faith that I could actually do this. I go in and I get it. I start reading it, and within about 10 pages of the personal ad I actually just wrote. And that
wow.
It was a pretty mind trip for sure. So that's one of my big conversations with God. Although, I've had dreams of God where the next day things come true, and in the dream is God. And then I've had dreams of it's like the Holy Spirit. I'm not a Christian, but the thing I have in a dream, and I'm not a Christian, or I am a Christian. I like all religions. I just don't like the break off and the, you're not a Christian, you're not a Muslim, so,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Separation. Yeah.
Yeah, just a separation. It's like, if it's not in your heart, where is it? Is it in some book? It's in your heart. It's in knowing how to connect with things, not knowing how to read things. Not just reiterating what someone else is telling you or some book telling you. It's seeking the truth. I guess wherever you do it, it's there. Anyways. Question.
Yeah, in the book Ishmael, because I don't think people are going to know what Ishmael, the book is. I don't. I've heard of that Ishmael, but I don't know. I don't know what that is. And then you had mentioned that you felt the end coming. So when the end of what coming?
The sensation I had where I was really heightened and I could feel things and I could predict things coming at me. It's this really thin feeling where you're connected with everything and you can feel things. I could look at the trees and it's almost like they're moving.
Right.
Or it's not like they're moving, it's like they're breathing. When like a tree goes to the wind, I feel it almost breathing. It's weird. I don't know exactly what it is, but that's how I would put a symbolic gesture to it.
I think that's
what that was. I'm sorry, just to finish that. That heightened state was going to end. And in that heightened state was complete acceptance and love. And in that moment, I was like, God, this is what it is. They have this. They have this amongst all of us. What more could anybody ever want? And that's why I wanted to continue it.
Exactly. So how is it how was it that in Ishmael that you put an ad in, but in this book that's probably been around forever, that ad was in the book?
It was around for I think it could have been anywhere from a year to 5 years that it had been around. Probably a year or two, I bet, because it was really popular and you couldn't find a used copy of it.
Right. And your ad was in that book that you wrote.
Yeah, it was almost verbatim, if not verbatim. It's hard for me to believe it would be verbatim, but it was pretty shocking. And then the person that was finding this ad, he acted like me. He had thrown something in the trash and was having all these flashes of gurus and how he doesn't believe in gurus and blah, blah, blah. And he finally takes the paper out of the trash, out of these, backwards stories, and then he opens up the trash and it's an ad from this, this teacher saying, I will come teach you about God, or I forget exactly all the ad and the wordage, both what I thought and what it said. But it was an ape. It was an ape named Ishmael that taught him, about God.
Wow.
Or something like that. I forget all the details. I'm more stuck on the fact that the ad that the ape had placed was the same ad I was about to place to do the exact same thing. And use that book as the symbolism to have me do it and hear that voice in the morning that I think was God and have that expansion. It was all pretty screwed up.
Well, it sounds like it's like everything is linking. It's like linking it together. First the conversation, and then going into the teacher, and then hearing the God, and then the Ishmael, and then the ad that you placed, and then seeing that and reading that. It's more of linking into and making a connection. And I feel that's what people want, is to open their hearts and connect. And I feel that with you, so where do you stand? With the experiences that you're having and being this teacher that's been, you've clearly having experiences that are happening, and so it seems as though something is trying to get your attention, because it sounds like it's all for the good. When you're tapping into feeling the people, it's all a positive experience. It's like when you really feel someone else, and it's a space of love. That's really what we all are, animals and all that. That to me is
that's what we would desire to have, but instead we perform other actions somehow, and we all do.
So where are you at this moment with all of this? How do you feel about all of this that's really kind of happening to you, and these different experiences? You know, I mean, how do you...
Yeah, I mean, to be straight, you know, and you know probably I wouldn't bring this out like this. Because of my experiences, it backs up the thought of what I always thought when I was a child, that I have strong prophetic tendencies, and it's hard. That's hard to accept. You know, you could be psychotic, but you know, I don't think I am. But it is by definition psychotic. So I have trouble processing it, and I tell it to people a lot. I've told it to you, not a lot, but you know, I mean, It doesn't take people to tell them. If they start talking any kind of spiritualism, I know it's going to go down that line because I like to share. I love to share. So, but it's difficult for me. And what's interesting that you and I have talked about before, about my resistance to it. And I think when you experience it, you can't. It comes at you in a way that you can't process. And as my astrological, you know, my Grand Trine says, I'm all air. I'm all intellect. I love science and I love thought. And that's just not a great combination in that sense. But to tell the truth, I think it would happen to anyone. You can't receive this kind of stuff and process it appropriately. It doesn't process that well. And the more that you try to process it, the more it confuses you. And that's my natural tendency. And what was interesting in that time we were talking is I've been having all these episodes of, you know, phones and computers kind of just going on the fritz, you know, just kind of breaking down, you know. To give you one, I was, you know, to give people one. But before I give the one, the idea that we thought is I'm not comfortable expressing this. Right. And I get and when I get frustrated in general, it can be over anything, things around me can just start shutting off and doing all sorts of weird things, and you know. So
I was going to say, don't you think that would be because it's just like if anything we shut down, it's going to try and, I mean, it's like shoving things down, and eventually it's going to have to come up.
Well, I think, you know, instead of saying it could be this, it could be that, if you look at what's happening is I'm getting frustrated and I'm getting angry and I'm saying things aren't working for me and why can't this work easier? So everything just falls apart around me. I definitely have some sort of, I definitely have some connection with the environment or something. Or you know, I tell people that all the time, you know. I don't know if they believe me or if they don't. But, like, one cool experience of this, and it's cool, but, you know, there's an important message there that I got to get back to my practices more. But I am lazy. To some extent, that's my biggest problem is I'm lazy. But to tell the truth, I've been doing really good lately, Linda. I'll tell you about that later. It's not worth telling now. But an interesting thing that happened is I was in my kiosk booth, my car, and my phone the other day. I received a call and took it through my car. And then as I was talking, you know, through my car started all of a sudden reiterating my GPS from the other day. And I was like, okay, that's a little fucked up. Something's wrong with my car or something. Then I'm working and I'm, you know, once again, I'm taking a phone call and I'm talking to the individual. And then all of a sudden, a GPS that I had used on my phone of the prior day all of a sudden just starts talking as well, right in the middle of the phone call. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. You know, already it's like, how does that happen? How does GPS just call right up from the other day? But then when it happens on your car and your phone, that's really interesting. So that's not a breakdown. That's like you like to say to me, that's something trying to get your attention.
Yeah, that's very real.
And that would make sense if we were to speculate on a potential, you know, possible meaning.
Absolutely. So would you, because we've got about 20 seconds left, so would you, because we talk about teacher, and we're going to continue this next week as to also how can people, one, develop such skills.
Which is they can.
Yes, and about the teaching.
There's an important thing, though.
Yeah,
let me say this, because I know I don't have a lot of time. When people want to develop these skills, what I see with most people is they don't really want to. They talk about fantasy. They experience fantasy, but there is no reason to experience fantasy. You can go on a quest, but what you have to know about that quest of knowledge, of that quest of attainment of the truth, is you won't want to find it. Now, I know that's a strange thing, but can you take it? Could you take all of a sudden something to appear in front of you that should not appear in front of you? Do you just think you're going to be comfortable with that? Of course not. And in every moment of these experiences, there is discomfort, there is resistance. And when you legitimately search and accept those discomforts and ask God, what do I do or whatever, because you can't tell God what you think is good or how things are going to work.
Exactly.
It doesn't work. The allowing of God, the truth comes through you. You don't control the truth. So that's a really important starting point for people to understand, because they won't attain something that they have a certain resistance. But it's always going to be in, can I experience the resistance? If you can't even experience the resistance, trust me, you're not ready.
Yeah,
and
let's talk about
point, because that is the utter truth.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that next week on August 10th at 8 p.m. Here, Blog Talk Radio, we'll be talking about resistance and being not ready, because I think that's really an important aspect to bring in, because we can think we're ready, but we may not be ready. So, we're out of time.
And then when you do that, you'll experience a lot. Anyways, I'm sorry.
Yes, and we'll allow that. So I want to thank you for being on the show. And we will continue this part 2, and we'll probably end up going to part 3 and part 4 for anybody that's listening who joined us today, who will be joining us via YouTube, watching the video and stuff. Look for part 2 coming August 10th at 8 p.m. So we'll see everybody then. Awesome. Thanks. Don't forget to follow, comment, subscribe, and like us, and join us August 10th.